What's up in War Eagle War Report family? You got Ike Jones back with another morning drop. Today, we're talking about the vacancy at defensive line coach for Auburn University, and I am going to toss out three names, no intel, but just people who I think Auburn should potentially swing at for this hiring vacancy. Y'all know how we do right here, War Report style. Let's drop it on.
You are now listening to the War Report. Drop.
Morning drop. You got Ike Jones back on a Monday, February the 5th. Hopefully everybody is having a wonderful day so far. Do me a favor if you're rewatching this, make sure that you're out there sharing the content on social media at the War Report. Hashtag get your weight up. Please give us a thumbs up on the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you're out there in the land of podcasts, and make sure you're sharing the content as well. Listen, man, Auburn is still in the midst of a coaching search, and a lot of names are getting tossed out there. First, I'll address the names that I think most people have already talked about, which are pretty, they would all be good hires. And we talked about them, or the guys talked about them a little bit yesterday, so I'm not going to spend too much time on them. But the first name that's been out there is, of course, former Auburn defensive coordinator Rodney Garner, which I think is a quality hire. And I think, Auburn could definitely do worse than hiring Rodney Garner back on their staff. I feel like he is a known entity here in the Southeastern Conference, known to the recruiting landscape. Definitely would be a quality hire. A lot of people already on that ship. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about that one. The next one I think that a lot of people have floated out there would be Georgia Tech defensive line coach Kyle Pope. Also think that would be a quality hire and could be someone who has a connection to Coach Hugh Freeze in his previous stop at Liberty. So understand why people would have his name associated there as well. And then the other one would be to elevate the now defensive GA, Vontrell King Williams, which I think would be a good move on Coach Freeze's part. Now, as far as his ability to do the work of going out and being a recruiter and all that sort of thing, I think he relates well to the kids to the young men on the team, and he'd have some cohesion that would be there with the people in the room. So I think that'd be a quality. I don't know if he's ready to run a room yet, but I think that he could be a guy that would be a quality hire to promote. So again, not going to spend a lot of time on that one. But three quality candidates that have been tossed out there by a lot of different people. But what I want to do is just kind of stir the pot a little bit and throw some other names out there for people to think about. Again, this is not any intel that I have or I've heard that they're talking to, I'm just talking about people who I'd like to see get in the mix a little bit, right? Just to start the conversation a little bit. And I'm going to start with somebody who, if I'm being honest, I'm being petty about it. All right. Now, follow me here. I think Auburn should potentially go out there and look at Randall Joyner, who is currently the defensive line coach for Ole Miss. He was a defensive line coach when DJ Durkin was at Ole Miss, right? So there's familiarity with him on that staff there. And, hey, why not poach somebody else from Ole Miss? Ole Miss's defensive line has gotten progressively better since he's been there. So I'm all for kneecapping Ole Miss one more time, taking somebody else off of their staff, just because Lane Kiffin, I'm here for all of the meltdown that Lane Kiffin would have all over social media if we poach somebody else off his staff, particularly someone who is doing as well as that young man. So Randall Joyner, I think, with the familiarity with DJ Durkin, is somebody you just be like, hey man, you good over there? You sure? So that would be somebody who I would like to see them go after just for those reasons. Again, I think he's a good coach, but it's the added little something, you know what I'm saying? So I'm down for that. The next name I want to throw out here, far off the beaten path, really swinging for the fences. Don't even know if it really makes sense from a recruiting landscape thing, but is a quality coach who if we're being honest, has put together some of the best defensive lines in college football over the last couple of years. And that is the current defensive line coach for Michigan, and Mike Elston, right? So Mike Elston, a lot of people feel as if once Michigan settles in on their coach and all that, he could be potentially get tapped as their defensive coordinator to try to keep some continuity with that Michigan staff. But Mike Elston, I think, is one of the best defensive line coaches in the country. And, if they're not already in talks with him, this is somebody you definitely at least put a floater out there and say, hey, man, because listen, those Michigan defensive lines, let's be honest, that's the reason that Michigan's been good the last few years. I mean, dominant in that conference is because of the defensive line. Again, from a recruiting landscape, as far as where he's used to recruiting, he's more, he's been in the Michigan, Illinois, Indiana area for the vast majority of his career. I don't even know if he'd be interested in coming to the Southeastern Conference. I think his preference would be to get the defensive coordinator spot at Michigan if that was offered to him. But I think it's somebody who Auburn should take a look at least, right? And say, hey, man, if you can come down here and do that, then he'd be awesome. And then you'd have the potential to get maybe some of those defensive linemen that would transfer from Michigan over into Auburn. So I think that would be somebody who Auburn should at least kick the tires on and see what's up with that. The last one that I want to throw out here, again, no intel on any of this stuff. I'm just looking around the landscape of college football. And, I know a lot of people are really high on bringing in former Auburn players. And I'm going to throw out an Auburn name that probably a lot of people aren't thinking about. And that's Jess Simpson. Jess Simpson is currently on the staff at Georgia Tech. He is a defensive GA that is behind, the guy that everybody is talking about from that Georgia Tech staff, Kyle Pope. He's a defensive GA right now, former Auburn Tiger player, was on the Duke staff as defensive line coach with Mike Elko there at Duke. And I think that he would be a quality hire as somebody who has had a lot of experience, and he doesn't necessarily have the recruiting profile I think that you would want to for a high caliber guy, but I think that he's a guy that's familiar with the landscape, definitely understands the culture of Auburn as a former player, and would be somebody who I think would be wanting to get back into that line as far as being an on the field staff person. So Jess Simpson is another name that I think I just want to throw out there as a potential somebody that Auburn could take a look at and would be a quality hire. But any of the names that have been out there so far, I think would be good hires. I wouldn't be mad at any of them. I've got a list of like 7 or 8 names that I think would be good hires out there. I just threw out the 3 that I think are, I wouldn't say home runs, all 3, but again, listen, when we're talking about the situation with Joyner, I just like the idea of it. And again, he fits the mold, I think, of what Coach Hugh Freeze wants on his staff as far as young, energetic guys that have a lot of energy for recruiting. He's already here in the Southeastern Conference, and he checks the get Lane Kiffin up out of here box. You know what I'm saying? And then when you talk about Mike Elston, I think he is kind of like the home run hire. I don't know how long you could retain a guy like Mike Elston, considering he is up for defensive coordinator spots in places, but he would be somebody who would be a good piece to come in and potentially kind of just that moves the landscape. I think it puts you in the conversation as far as staffs, defensive staffs, with the likes of a Georgia, right, where you have guys that could be DC somewhere, but they're defensive, assistants on your staff as long as you're paying them right. Now, you're going to have to pay the right kind of money, and I don't know what kind of money Auburn really has for a staff to get a guy like Mike Elston. And then again, Jess Simpson, I think he's kind of a little bit more off the beaten path kind of hire, somebody who has familiarity with the school, and he is currently not in a D-line position, but has coached in that position previously, maybe looking to get back into that place. So, what I want to know is, are there any people that you all think would be not of the typical, like something that everybody isn't saying, like a a sneaky hire that Auburn could look at? What are the ones that nobody's talking about that maybe you want to see happen? And I'd love to see your guys' thoughts and comments on that. But before we get into all of that, we always got to give a shout out to the people that make the War Report go, especially this here morning drop. And that's our folks at the Rogue Shop. Make sure you head over to rogueshop.com using code REPORT when you do. Get a little something off your purchase. America's #1 online dispensary is the Rogue Shop. When you get over there, you can find aids for sleep, stress, anxiety, pain, all of the above. You can get that at the Rogue Shop. Make sure that you tell them the War Report sent you. Use code REPORT when you do. America's #1 online dispensary is the Rogue Shop. I want to talk to the greatest fan base in the world. That is the Auburn fans. And you all here in the live chat. We appreciate you, Green Name Gang, chopping it up with me this morning. Get it started off with Auburn Dad with the super chat that says, I want the UGA D-line coach. Might be a pipe dream. Listen, that would be in the we're talking about Mike Elston, tectonic, earth-shattering moves. Poaching the defensive line coach for Georgia would be one of those. I don't know how likely that is. You're going to have to pay top dollar to get him to move over from Georgia, but it would be the kind of move that would say, hey, we're here to play ball. So I wouldn't be mad at it. Listen, if that's the kind of move that Coach Hugh Freeze makes, I think everybody would welcome it. And I definitely am here for that type of move. See what else we got going on here. Derek Anderson is a fan of Rodney Garner. He says he wants to see Rodney G in there. Definitely not mad at that. Jonathan Boyson says, War Damn Eagle ready to have the staff finalized. Absolutely. Thought we had this wrapped up a week ago. It was all good just a week ago. And now we're back trying to get the staff finalized again. But yeah, I agree with you. Think we need to make it happen. Corey Weber says, I still think it will be Kyle Pope hired at the coach for the D line. Again, not mad at that one at all. Jay Flowers says, questions, Ike, honestly, have you ever thought about coaching or trying? If I were to coach any sport, it honestly would be basketball. I have thought about it a few times, but I just don't know if the travel life is something that would fit in with my current day-to-day situation. But yeah, I have thought about it. So, maybe one day you'll see your boy Ike Jones on the sideline somewhere coaching basketball. I wouldn't be a football coach, though. Listen, I'm not built to be outside in the rain and cold for football games. Not doing that. I'm not doing it. I'll be in the booth, maybe. But still, got to be at practice. I'm not doing that. Boy, do you hear what my voice sounds like right now? And this is with me working indoors all the time. Not doing it now. Basketball. That's for your boy. Basketball coach. Jonathan Boyson says, Baby Lane would blow a gasket. I like it. Listen, man, I'm here for it. I'm gonna pull up with my popcorn ready if it happens. Trust and believe. Trust and believe. Tiffany Byer says, yes, bring the petty. I'm here for it. Hey, man, listen, I'm just saying. Hey, it's not as if there's no familiarity with our current defensive coordinator. You know what I'm saying? I ain't just pulling stuff out of a hat. There's at least some sort of connection there, but the reactions that would happen, seismic and substantial, and I love it. Chris S says, can we please bring back Rodney Garner and make him a sign saying no coup clause? Make him sign a no coup clause. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Rodney Garner is a very great. He's a very good coach, man, and I think he would do wonderful things. But that is definitely something that would be something you got to think about. Jonathan Boyson jumps back in and says, you are right there. D-line play has gotten better. Excuse me. And he is recruiting pretty well for the defensive line. Kamarion Franklin just signed over there. I'm just saying, though, it's not a crazy thought. It's not a crazy thought. I think he's quality. Let's see here. Marcus Holland says, why not try to get Todd Bates from Oklahoma via Clemson, bring him home to Alabama? I like this one. I like this one right here. Definitely somebody that's name isn't getting thrown out a lot. I think that would be a quality hire. Not bad. Stay Fly says, I like Calvin Thibodeau. Okay. I see y'all throwing out some good names here. That's what I'm talking about, baby. Steve Bradley says, I would like to see Bo Davis. He's anchored down at LSU. Kelly made him the highest paid D line coach in the country. I think if you're going to get line coach, you're going to have to pay top dollar for him. Again, I don't know where Auburn is on the dollar as far as what they're willing to pay for a defensive line coach. But if you're talking about poaching and you're talking about getting guys who you're going to submit as some of the best, then I think you got to swing for the fences and pay a little bit. Jonathan Boyson says, what about DJ Durkin's defensive line coach, Elijah Robinson? I actually looked into Elijah Robinson. He just got a defensive coordinator spot somewhere. I can't remember where it was when I was looking this up earlier, but he just got hired as a D coordinator off of that Texas A&M staff somewhere. So that's the only reason he was not on my list, because he was one of the ones that I initially thought about when I was putting this list together. So, yeah. Anonymous X, excuse me, says Nick Eason at Clemson, great recruiter. I would love to see Nick Eason come back and be here. I just think that Clemson was a dream job for him being a former Clemson player. I don't think that there's been enough of a downward spiral for that Clemson program for Nick Eason to try to come back to Auburn. Would be a phenomenal hire. I just don't think that he would be a guy that would be ready to do that sort of thing. Stay Fly throwing another one out there, says SMU's defensive line keeps getting better and better. I think with the more talent, he probably does well. I'm not mad at that one. Listen, man, I think he actually was on my list of potentials out here. I narrowed it down to 3. But I think he was on my list of potentials, and that's Thibodeau that he's talking about there. So yeah, I'd love to see a guy like there. There's some other names that are on here. I'm not going to sit here and rattle off names all day, but yeah, I think that, Thibodeau would be a good hire. He'd be somebody who you could probably pay more than what he's getting paid right now. And he would be a quality guy in knowing the landscape, SMU being there in Texas. I like it. I like it a lot. Again, I think he was on my top. I have like a top 8 here that I put down here, is just kind of looking at both guys who have connections to the Southeast and guys who have connections to the previous or to the current coaching staff, and then just kind of swing for the fences guys here. So I like the Thibodeau name getting thrown out there. Definitely one that I think would make a good hire. Anonymous X says, what do you feel like the timeline is this week? I feel like the timeline needs to be this week. I think you need to move pretty quickly on this one. If they don't already have interviews. So my wonder here is, Garrett was started interviewing for this position for a while. Did they already put some feelers out there saying, hey, if this goes down, would you be willing to come in for an interview? I'm hoping that's the case. And this is, I didn't talk about this yet, but this is another reason why I actually like the DJ Durkin hire. And I think the Chris Kiffin hire would have been a good one, because DJ Durkin is so good with front 7 personnel and he understands what he wants to do with that front 7. He has done a good job in his career with hiring defensive line coaches. Having a DC that's already sat in the defensive coordinator seat in this conference makes it where you're able to, I think, to move a little bit more quickly on these types of things, because he has a network to pull from and potentially bring in some folks that he has connections with that could potentially move over to Auburn. I like the Durkin hire a lot because I think he brings you stability in your ability to hire quickly, and maybe even get a guy like Vontrell to move him up that doesn't have that experience, but you do, so that you can mentor him and bring him along more quickly to run that room a little bit, because currently Durkin does not have a room that he's running primarily. Now, he could run the outside linebackers, what we had as the jack position. I think that he could run that as a room by himself if he wanted to, but he could potentially step in and help with the defensive line coaching while you had to help run the room while you bring a guy up that hasn't had that before. So I like the hire there for him even more from that standpoint, which again, that fits with Chris Kiffin as well, even though he hasn't been a DC as recently. But I do like the hire because of that potential to be able to bring in somebody who maybe doesn't have as much experience running rooms, but you do, so that you can be able to assist with that. So hopefully they're going to be able to move along pretty quickly on that. Let's see here. A couple more here, and we're going to get out of here. Stay Fly thinks it needs to be this week or Monday at the latest to bring in the hire. Jonathan Boyson says, I hope Coach Hugh Freeze had that foresight. I hope he did too. Same thing with DJ Durkin. You know, hopefully he hit the ground saying, okay, this is a potential. Let me go out here and see who I can put feelers out to, which is all the more reason why I like Joyner. You know what I mean? P. Pass jumping in says, would Brenton Buckner want to be a D-line coach in college? The Jacks secondary was so trash, they got the whole staff fired. I don't know. That's one I hadn't even considered. I don't really look at the NFL ranks as much when I start thinking about that, because listen, man, the way that college coaching has gone, the direction that it's gone, I think it's become less attractive for guys to move from the NFL to college. As a matter of fact, you're seeing more college coaches jump to the NFL ranks because of what the calendar is. You kind of have to have a passion for recruiting if you're going to be a coach right now in college. And guys that have never done that, or don't have a history of doing it well, or are removed from that for a while, that's a muscle that you kind of have to retrain. So I don't know if that's as attractive as it once was to move to be in a more of a mentorship place than you were previously, and having to be in the recruiting spaces the way that you have to be right now for the college ranks. So I just don't know how successful you can be with longevity with guys that are moving from the NFL. It would be a good hire, and it definitely puts you in a position where you can use that cachet of him being an NFL guy, because it worked for Nick Eason, and it worked for Jeremy Garrett, right, frankly. But I don't know how long they would be wanting to be involved in that sort of thing. So I don't know. But a lot of great names you guys are throwing out here. I want to hear more from you all about what you think about who could be the potential hire. Again, I want to hear some names everybody isn't saying though. Throw out some wild names out there just so we can get the conversation going. But that's all I got for you guys today. Appreciate you dropping in with me today. As always, the morning drop is brought to you by Rogue Shop. Make sure you head over to rogueshop.com using code RAPPORT. Before you get out of here, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, share the content with somebody. We'll be back at you with another morning drop tomorrow. Until the next time, and as always, War Eagle, peace.